past haunts us all. Whether it be a person, place, or thing, we are reluctant to let go. We call to the dead out of desperation and intrigue, searching for answers about what lies behind the shadows. We are paranormal researchers. We are Necromancers. Hello and welcome to the Necromancer Live Show. I am your host, Justin Brown, and we are presenting episode 71 with Katie Turner. If you guys are new to the show, this is how it works. We're going to do a standard interview format with Katie. And if you have any questions for Katie, initially right out of the gate or throughout the show, go ahead and write your question in the comment section. We have people watching YouTube and Facebook comments, and periodically we'll go through the comments, read them out, and have them answered for you. If you want to be shouted out, make sure you at least comment and say hi so we can see your name, and we'll shout you out and try to make you part just as much as a part of the show as everybody else on the show. So, Jess and Missy, are you ready?
Ready.
All right.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. Okay. All right. Well, a little bit about Katie. She is a paranormal investigator and a psychic from Ontario, Canada. Ever since Katie was a little girl, she has been sensitive to the paranormal, from predicting future events to speaking directly to deceased family members. Katie realized that she had a broad spectrum of psychic ability. Katie is also proud to be a part of the hit series Paranormal Survivor. As one of the paranormal experts, Katie educates viewers on paranormal activity. Katie is also a dedicated member of Canadian Supernatural Research Society. As the team's founder, lead investigator, and psychic medium, she travels with her team investigating, giving guidance and closure to those people in need. So without further ado, welcome, Katie.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Justin.
You're welcome. Round two, right? We had you on Supernatural Symposium.
Round two.
That was not what this is going to be. We're going to have, a talk mano y mano. We're not going to have to share the mic. This is specifically about your story, and I can't wait to get you, know you more and let our viewers get to know you so we can do that networking thing that we love so much. But the first thing I like to ask, I want to know, I think you touched on it, if I remember a little bit, on the symposium, Supernatural Symposium. When, your bio states, since you were very little, you started having, events happen that are classified or defined as paranormal. Why don't we elaborate on that, give them a really good sense of what was going on?
Well, it actually all started with my parents. Before even I could recollect, my parents would tell me stories when I got much older of me predicting things or saying things were going to happen or seeing people that had passed away. Fast forward, even when I started, remembering 3-4 years old, I would have deceased family members come in my room at night and speak to me. I would be able to predict death. I would, tell, Grandpa's going to go, or, I was able to see that, and I was able to communicate with them. They, it wasn't as if they were just visiting. I was able to get messages across to my loved ones that were still living.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. Do you care to elaborate or just tell one story about something you were able to pass on message-wise?
One of the stories that my parents tell me that I told them is I was about 2.5 years old, and I was playing on the floor with a play phone, one of those phones that have a dial rotary, and you pick it up and play. And my mother came into the room and asked, what I was doing. And I had said to her, well, I was talking to my grandfather, who was living. And she kind of just chucked it off and giggled. And I said, Grandpa's coming home. And my mother said, well, what do you mean by that? And I said, well, he's coming home. home. And she said to me, well, honey, they're gone to Florida. They're gone to Florida for the winter. They're not coming back until the spring. And I said, no, he's coming home. And within a few days, we got a knock on the door, and my grandfather was having some health issues and had to turn around and come right back home. So they were quite blown away at that, because there's no way I would know that. She kind of thought it was my imagination at first, and then that's when she started to realize that I had these abilities.
So line up many more occurrences like this. So now you're starting to get, validation. Your parents are starting to get validation that, hey, wait a minute, right? There's something going on here. So how did they take that?
My parents are very open. They're spiritual people. My grandmother is one of the most psychic people I've ever met in my life. She's very good at predicting things, although she's afraid of it. My mother is sensitive. My father is sensitive. They take it in stride, and so it was a normalcy in my family. Growing up, they never tried to explain it away. They never tried to say it was monsters in the closet or it was make-believe. They always engaged and allowed me to explain what I was seeing and just digested it. I think at first they were a little bit afraid because of the in-depth of my abilities and what I was seeing, but it became normal. As a matter of fact, a few months ago, I was having a conversation with my mom, and I said to her, at what point was I normal in life when I'm seeing these things and feeling these things? And she said, it was just a part of you. And so they accepted it, embraced it, and they still support me today.
Right. Now, I have a question. I usually don't come right out and ask questions like this, but a lot of people, like my mom told me the same thing. She thought it was normal. It was normal for her to do those things that similar things that you described. There's been people that come to me and ask me, how can I improve my abilities? Maybe there's self-doubt, maybe there's something blocking something or impeding something. What would you say to those people? What would be your response?
I tell people practice is everything. It's like anything else. If you want to play football well, you got to practice. If you want to ice skate, you got to practice. No matter what you do in life, the more practice that you get, the better you are at it. And it comes down to the active intent. And, if you're going to be selfish about things, I think a lot of people, do it for selfish reasons. And I can say that that's not going to help you. I didn't get into my business for money. That wasn't, my purpose. As a matter of fact, doing this for a living as a full-time psychic was not my intentions at all. The reason I began my paranormal team was simply because I wanted to prove what I was seeing was real, but I was not crazy. And it's not that anybody else accused me of that. It was for myself. If I'm physically seeing these things and they're getting stronger and stronger, how can I use equipment and have other people's opinions and evaluated opinions on what I'm seeing? And so that's where it kind of stemmed from. I think if anybody's going to be working on psychic abilities, the first thing we need to do is find out what type of ability is strongest for them. So many psychic and mediums are different. I consider myself clairaudient, clairsentient, clairvoyant, clairconscient, and empathic. But not all psychics are of that. And that doesn't mean they're better or less. It just means that they receive information or the download of information differently. So some people may only hear spirits. And I think you have to really base your abilities off of your foundations. So by hearing, that's what you would work on first, and you would build up your other abilities once you kind of have that down pat. So when you're receiving the downloads, you're understanding and comprehending what is being told to you.
Yeah, that sounds like common sense pretty much. Now, you talked about, trying to prove to yourself and validate to yourself. Do you think that the doubt and the skepticism that comes from society and our culture is reflected and impressed upon you, like that, you feel more doubt of your own abilities because there's a lot of skepticism and doubt out there, or is it just you doing that to yourself?
No, I think it's a bit of both. I have to agree with you. I think that imprinting on other people's energies can really cause an effect on people. You walk into a hospital, and a lot of people who don't even realize they're empathic are going to pick up those abilities. So whether it's psychosomatics or it's an actual imprint onto your aura, if that's what you want to call it energy, of course it's going to add to it. But I think self-doubt is one of the biggest issues that we have in the paranormal community, whether it be an investigator or a psychic. I think that, we're trying to prove something, and whether it be to ourselves or others, we're trying to get that justification.
Right. We're trying to objectify things because that's something, we, like you said, we do for ourselves, we do for others. We, produce video and produce content for people to consume, whether it be strictly entertainment or be educational or both. Getting, it out there is a way to have an impact, whether it be teaching people or just connecting with people, like people with abilities or have had experiences don't feel quite so alone, Right. So doing all those things like me, you, and everybody else that we associate with, it's not, a lot of people like to say, oh, they're trying to, rip people off. They're trying to, exploit, so on and so forth. And they just don't take the time to understand the person, the motives behind the person. And it's troubling.
Right. I say that my paranormal team differs from a lot of teams, and I'm not saying we're better, we're just different. A lot of teams focus on simply gathering the evidence for self-justification. And you know what, I'll be honest with you, when I first started, that's exactly what it was. I wanted to prove to me. But we now do a lot of residential cases, a lot of, I work with children. I try and, help them metabolize what they're seeing and understanding it so that they don't feel alone. And we're trying to, now I don't have to justify it to me anymore because I know what I see.
Right.
But now it's explaining it or trying to make other people comfortable. So when we go into a residential house, oftentimes people are scared, and it's because of the sensationalization of Hollywood and what the general public believes to be true. They're living in fear, and they don't need to. And so we're trying to educate and comfort and add guidance to these people that are scared in their homes.
Right. Absolutely. I agree with that 100%. And to add to it, and I'm not scared to add to this, what does theology and religion do to people? I'm not saying all, but what issues do you see in that avenue?
I think people, in a religious aspect, I think people are quick to judge. They're quick to jump to conclusions because of what has either been bred into them or been, as they've been raised as children. And I think it goes down to modern day society and what we assume to be there. If I had a nickel for every time somebody said there's a demon in my house, and it turned out, it was a dog that passed away, It's just simply educating and allowing them to see the physical evidence and validating it with my psychic abilities and showing them that they don't need to be in fear. Is there evil out there? Absolutely. We had talked about before the light and the dark. It's always there. But people have to realize that they don't need to fear it. They need to conquer it.
Right. And, there's so much, obsession with the pulp culture. And you got people that, are genuinely just want to be, want attention. They want to be famous. They seek that attention because it's self-fulfilling. It's rewarding to them. But at the same time, they're learning things from that source that's, supposed to entertain and, exploit people's fears and other things that are not quite so pure and are tainted. And that's an issue. But, I love that you right away came out and said, hey, I'm trying to clean up from, what all these other groups have done, especially the media. And it's a tough job, real tough job.
It's a very tough job. I don't go into this to be famous. I'm not going into this to, gain likes. I have my fair share of issues, people, differences of opinions. I simply want people to understand all of it. I want people to educate themselves. And if I can offer some guidance and show them that they have the ability to seek that out themselves without going to the media per se, or the stereotypes of the media, I think that it lends a hand in the overall education and the understanding of the paranormal. Right. We get stuck in that, wheel of what what we see on TV, and that's not simply, it's just not the case.
Right. All right. Well, I think we got a good start on establishing what your motive is, what your goal is, and, pretty much who you are from a psychic point of view. I want to go to the chat real quick, and we'll do some shout outs real quick, see if there's any initial questions. I do see some of your fans and friends and followers in there. Heather McKenzie, I see. I'm pretty sure she's one of yours because she was.
It's McKinney.
Oh, McKinney. I'm sorry.
McKenzie.
Yeah, it is.
McKechnie.
We're all wrong. We're all wrong. Oh, go ahead. Try not to mispronounce anybody else's name.
Right. I have Bill Davis. I have Derek Schreiner. I have Josh Bender. I have Matt Benton. I have Sandy Griffith. I have Becky Compton, Christy Brown, Jamie Hunt, Daniel Everson, and I did have a question if you wanted me to ask now.
Oh, hold on just for a second. We'll do shout outs for you too before we do that.
Okay. That's all I have for right now.
Thanks for joining us. Feel free to share, invite your friends. We want to hear their questions, and we want them to talk with all you folks in there. So, okay, YouTube, what's going on with there?
All right, on YouTube, we have Debbie, Val, and Joe. That's the only ones that has commented already. And I have one question as well, but I can wait on that.
All right, well, go ahead and ask yours, and then we'll go to Facebook.
Okay, Debbie wants to know, does Katie use any tools beside herself? If so, what does she use?
Great question, Debbie. That's a great question. So in terms of my psychic abilities, I often use crystals. I don't use any form of cards or tea leaves or anything like that. Basically, I tell people it's like a download. So I download the information, whether it be through sight, hearing, empathic, in other words, like picking up emotions metaphorically or physically. And basically, I walk into the room or into the residence, the building, whatever, and I pick up the energies in that room. And I kind of develop, my own kind of, what would you call it, symbolism with the pictures that I'm receiving. And from there, I kind of validate it that way. And I, speak it, retain it, write it down, and go from there. When I'm doing sessions, basically, I sit and I scribble. I draw pictures. I write it down as quick as I can, because once it's out and I've put it on paper, it's gone. I don't normally remember what I have been written. So.
Okay. What is your go-to crystal that usually you go to often?
That's really circumstantial. It depends on the situation. Whenever we're going into a negative, we know that there's something negative in the house or in the location. We often use tourmaline. Tourmaline is good for repelling negative energy. We'll use snowflake obsidian. When we're cleansing, I like to use hematite and selenite. If I'm going into a meditation, I like to use amethyst and quartz crystal. Sometimes we'll use citrine or rose quartz, depending on the emotion. But I would have to say, overall, I like to use selenite if I can.
Sure. Okay. That's it.
Go Team Selenite.
You and selenite, Justin.
All right. Did we have a question? Yeah. On Facebook.
Yeah. Can you give a situation where you can rule out coincidence?
Coincidence. Okay, so we had a situation where a woman had thought that there was something evil in her house. She was sure of it. She was, she was sure that there was something there, and it ended up being mice in her walls. So it was completely coincidental that when she was waking up at night and hearing these scratching, that she's thinking it's demonic, and it was actually coincidentally the mice in the walls. I don't know if that kind of chalks it up to coincidental. There was another situation where there was an apartment situation, and the woman thought that there was, entities above her, and it ended up being the actual tenant above her. So I guess that's a coincidence. most of the time we can figure out whether it's paranormal, completely paranormal or not. We can debunk a situation, but it even comes down to EMF. We've had situations where clients have explained that they're seeing things or feeling things, and we've had very high levels of EMF that are causing hallucinations. So, if that's what you want to call it coincidental, was it coincidentally her bedroom was close to the panel? But situations like that.
And that's all I have for right now.
Hopefully that answers the question. That was kind of vague. I wasn't sure either what coincidental thing she was talking about or asking about. If that answered your question, let us know. If not, elaborate more.
Absolutely, yeah.
All right. Well, some good questions right off the bat. When I do research on, and talk to people, interview psychics and mediums on what tools they use, crystals is probably the most common thing. It's just a good tool for various different things. Like you said, it's kind of like the psychic's toolbox. They do so much, and they help refract energy and amplify energy, block or unblock flowings of energy, and a whole bunch of cool things that are helpful. Do you find that the mind itself is something that can either hinder or be a very useful tool when it comes to psychic ability?
Meaning, what do you mean by that? Do you mean like
kind of like it goes along with the doubt, or maybe focusing more or doing any kind of research, anything cerebral to help you with your ability? Because I know everything stems from the mind, but is there anything you do intellectually or anything you do cerebrally to help?
I think that you have to. Okay, so meditation. Absolutely.
There
meditation. I think, if I'm having a rough night and I have a job, my job involves my mind. So, if you're tired that day, people are counting on me to get good readings or even in an investigation. And so you have to be on your game. Honestly, you need to be eating properly. You need to be exercising. You need to be an abundance of balance. Once you're off balance, if you're having a rough week, I often say it's like cutting steak with a butter knife. Sometimes the information is not downloaded as easily. Sometimes it's a little bit harder. And I think it goes to even the location that you go to. If there is a lot of anger or a lot of residual anger or sickness, sometimes that overplays the rest of the energy that you're trying to pick up. If it's very strong, you have to try and close that portion off and receive the other information, if that makes sense.
It does. You have to redirect, and you have to prioritize lots of different things with your mind. And of course, everyone does that to a degree, but psychically, it's it becomes a little bit more fascinating to me, because you're dealing with a whole nother sensory perception, for lack of a better way to explain it.
Yep.
So, if you're seeing something, but you're in an environment that has a whole bunch of visual stimuli, that might have, that might impede you, or hearing something, you have to be in the right frame of mind, the right environment, like all those things you state is what I was pretty much getting at. So pretty cool answer. We have a couple questions in Facebook. You wanted to go through those?
Sure, I can do that. Derek Schreiner asked, on average, how many times a day do you have moments of something coming through, and how do you keep it from disturbing your daily life?
I think one of the biggest things that you can do as a sensitive psychic medium is set your precedents. You have to set perimeters around yourself in order to live a normal life, to be honest. As stereotypical as normal is. I go to the grocery store and I'm not out to seeing, spirits. I'm simply going to get groceries. That being said, I always leave my I don't want to say abilities, but I always leave the door open a crack. And I say that because If somebody really needs me to get a hold of them, if they are really trying to pass a message along, I don't want to play ignorance and have it, oh, I'm sorry, I'm closed right now. I always leave myself open a little bit so that if somebody needs me, I can be there. Again, I really got into this to try and help people. That was my main focus. I didn't grow up, Katie didn't want to do this growing up. This was not in my plan. And basically, I say fate pushed me into this. So going back to the precedents, it's so important. You can go through psychic burnout if you're not careful on how you do things. A lot of psychics get into things and they'll do as many readings they can in a day or during the week, and they don't take time for themselves. So it's important, because if you don't take care of yourself, you're going to experience that burnout. And again, it would be like cutting steak with a butter knife. So make sure that you, if you're going to the grocery store, the active intent is going to the grocery store. If you're relaxing at night or you're spending time with your children, you want to make sure that you tell your guides or tell the other side that, listen, I'm busy right now. If it's really important, then get a hold of me. Otherwise, I'm busy right now. And it really has helped me. When I first started, I didn't understand that. And I was like a faucet turned on high. I had to turn it down and ask them to be respectful.
Cool answer. I would say be selective. Mm-hmm. Selective hearing, as my wife would say to me. Yeah. Selective psychicking.
Yeah.
Next question. Daniel asked, does your abilities make equipment malfunction due to your energy levels?
I have been able to, like EMF, sometimes EMF meters will kind of go wonky. There's a couple pieces of equipment that doesn't like me. I can tell you that right now. We use many different types of paranormal equipment, one being an Ovilus, and the Ovilus doesn't like me. I very rarely will hold it. I usually get another investigator to hold it because we've had issues. When I'm communicating, I try to go in without any batteries or anything like that. When I first walk in, I get a feel of the ambient energy, the residual energy. And from there, I try and damp it down to become an investigator. So I will speak of what I've seen, and then from there, try and use the equipment. But to answer your question, absolutely, we have had issues with equipment.
Real quick, have you tried to manipulate an EMF detector?
We have tried. Again, that's like a shot in the dark. We have tried different experiments. We've also tried different experiments with tones. So using tones with EMF and doing stuff like that. And we have had results, but I can't say there's anything I can say 100% that my energy 100% made that go off.
Right. Yeah. Cool question, though. Missy, wireless mics don't agree with Missy. Like, it's static.
Yeah.
Do you ever meditate on a place before you go there?
I try to meditate almost every day. I try to ground myself. But yes, I do. I try and get myself centered. If you're worried about getting the kids off to school and you're worried about, paying the car insurance and worried about all those things, it's like anything else. Would you want a doctor to do surgery on you when he's worried about something else? You want him fully focused. And I can't be a great psychic if I'm not 100% committed to it and focused on it. So yes, I do. I do meditate almost every day. Yeah. And to touch on the base of one person had asked about energy, it's really important too that when you're meditating and when you're trying to get yourself open to heighten your abilities, that you're not opening yourself up and being vulnerable. When you meditate, sometimes you are opening that higher level of consciousness. And like anything else, I explain it like flies coming through the door. When you open your door in the summer, you don't know how many flies came in. Your intent was the flies not coming in, but they came in anyway. So I encourage everybody that when you are meditating, you do it in a safe place, that you keep yourself protected, that you state your precedents and say, what your intent is during the meditation, so that you are keeping yourself protected. And even when going into an investigation, whether you're sensitive or not, it's always a good idea to protect yourself so that you're not taking something home with you when you go. Lots of times I will ground myself after my readings for the day. Whether it's taking a salt bath or, smudging, something like that. I try and protect myself that way because I have made the mistake and brought energy home to my family. So I learned that lesson the hard way. So it's so important to protect.
I see some more questions rolling in, but before we get to them, I'm going to ask another question related to meditation. Can you elaborate on how your process and the mechanics of the meditation that you use?
For me, I make sure the house is quiet. I make sure everybody's gone to school and work and the animals are not bothering me. I get into a place that I feel comfortable and safe. I used to play music. I don't need to do that anymore. And I try not to do it laying down. I try to sit and I basically quieten my mind. There's lots of exercises that you can do. There's many books. There's many videos that you can download to show how to meditate. But for me, it's if I have to grab crystals, sometimes depending on my mood or how I'm feeling from the night before, I will use, many different things. I'm a big fan. I wear it every day. You probably can't see it, but I'm a labradorite fan as well. That keeps from psychic attacks. So I make sure that I have that with me. And I basically try and relax. And sometimes I'll do it up to an hour.
Cool. Keep the questions rolling.
How would you deal with a child that you are 100% sure senses spirit, and how can I make sure he is safe?
Educate, educate, educate. So it's so important when you're dealing with a child to engage the child. Don't rush it. Don't brush it off. Don't, I would dialogue it. I would journal it and keep a catalog of what is happening, when it is happening. Sometimes children, they don't understand the difference between intelligent energy and residual energy. I mean, if it's not explained to you, then you don't understand that. So sometimes they're just picking up a residual energy, and it's important to find out if the communication is actually happening. This entity is intelligent and in fact communicating with this child, or the child is seeing the same thing, every night, and it's kind of a loop in time. To keep them protected, I always encourage a Himalayan salt lamp. I think they're great because they deionize negative ions. They bring in positive energy, and it's okay as a night light. I never say leave it on if you don't know how the light's going to react. You don't want to start fires, but it's important to let the child know as well that they have the power to ask it to leave. So the key is when something is invited in or has come in, the child usually thinks, if it's something negative, that it's a friend to play with. And I use the example that, did Mummy say that this person could come and visit? Did his mummy say he could come and visit? Well, if that's not the case, then you need to ask him to leave. If you're feeling like it's threatened, if you feel like this is something that's positive, or it's a guide or a loved one, then definitely engage with the child and just keep a catalog, keep a journal of what this child is seeing.
And then, what do you think about repetitive dreams about death?
Dreams are kind of a funny thing. Dreams can be metaphoric messages, or they can be literal messages. I have received premonitions in dreams where I have predicted death. It depends on the situation, and it depends on how the dream is kind of presented to you. Is this a loved one coming to tell you about death? Is this you seeing your own death? I'd really look into your life at first and see what is it in your daily life that could be causing this metaphoric message coming through. Death sometimes just means a new beginning. It's not always bad, but if there's a specific place and time that you're seeing this dream or you're in this dream, then I would take it as a warning to make sure that that doesn't happen. I have a metaphor with my clients. I tell people, if I'm not supposed to know, neither are you. And if I am supposed to know, so are you. So if it's being presented to you over and over again, I would really encourage you to kind of take a mental note. And if you're seeing vividly where this is happening, then try and change your reality. Try to manifest it so it doesn't happen.
Okay. Do you want me to keep going?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Why don't some people cross over?
I explain death in two scenarios. When you die, if you choose to cross over, I call you a spirit. If you choose to stay in this earth realm or the lower realm, I call you a ghost. There's many different reasons that people choose not to cross over, whether it be guilt or whether it be fear of judgment. In my experience, I have found that a lot of religious people have the hardest time crossing over. People who fear judgment, who fear hell per se, are afraid of that judgment when they cross over. So they usually stay. If it's somebody who has guilt or is afraid to cross, then they're going to stay. Also, people who are mourning, so the people who are living and they're left behind, I have had several instances where spirits can't cross over because they're being held down. These people will not allow them to leave. They will not allow them to go. In other words, they won't accept their death. They're still in mourning. They can't get over it. And it's so important to let these people go and accept that they are gone in this physical realm. But that would be my explanation.
Yeah, I dealt with a case just like the last thing you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
Jamie Hunt asked, have you ever been not able to rate a person or situation? If so, why do you think that is?
Yes. I have had scenarios where it's been very hard to read an individual, or I have not even been able to get in. And think about an emotional event. Think about something that think of a loved one that hurt you. When you put that emotional kind of wall up, you're putting that defense mechanism up, and it's hard for me to get through. People think that I can walk by and read them. They think that, oh, she can see what I'm doing. It doesn't necessarily work like that. I can pick up ambient energy, but unless I have your permission, you're going to put a wall up and I'm not going to be able to read you. There was a certain case where I went to a home and I, for the first time in my life, felt like somebody who was not psychic, and I felt absolutely empty. I went into this lady's house. She had been scared that there was something in her house, and it was affecting her children, and it was affecting them greatly, but it was always on the outside of the house. It was breaking down her van. The van was broken. The windows would break. The little girls in the bedrooms at night would see this woman literally floating from a 2-story window trying to scare these girls. And when I went into the house, I felt like I was cloaked. I literally felt like I was under psychic attack and somebody put a cloak over me that I could not see. I couldn't psychically see. I could physically see, but I was not getting anything. And that, above anything else I've ever seen in my life, scared me the most, because I thought, what is going on here? So I ended up cleansing the house. I cleansed the inside and the outside of the house. And as soon as I left the house, I did not drive straight home. I know that game. Sometimes they want to follow you. And I took a little drive and I went outside and I stood on we have waterfront where I live. And I basically stood there and tried to ground myself through the water and through the grass, the earth. And it slowly started to come back. That, I can honestly say, was one of the scariest moments I've had. So yes, I have to say that has happened.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's almost like you're connecting to guest Wi-Fi and you got to get their password.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay, and I have one more. A couple more. Do you think someone that took their own life will or will not cross over?
Again, that to me is circumstantial. I explain death with suicide as they go to a different place. I don't see it. I'm not religious. Excuse my ignorance. I'm not a religious person. I'm very spiritual. But I don't believe that they go to a purgatory that's described in the Bible. From my experience, I've seen them go to the left door or a different place. And basically they go to a rehab facility. And what they have to understand is that what they did was a emotional, physical reaction. It wasn't a spiritual one. So to break that down a little bit, think of anger, okay? Think of hate, think of jealousy, think of all of the kind of the oppressed emotions. Those are human emotions. Those are not spiritual ones. Your higher level of consciousness is not of that, okay? We're of love and light. So when you choose to take that act, you're taking it because of a human emotional reaction. We're on this earth for the greater good. We are reincarnating, we are coming back into this earth to better ourselves spiritually. So if they cross over at this point, they go to a different place, and it's not as if it's not heavenly, if that's what you want to call it. I mean, the other side is beautiful, but they have to go to certain classes or certain places in order to learn that. Some of them don't cross over. We have come in contact with many ghosts that fear that. They are fear of the judgment. They don't even realize they've done it because the confusion of their death. They have stayed in this ghostly realm, essentially, as ghosts.
I have a question based off what you just said. You said these type of emotions that would give people motivation to kill themselves will take them to a different place. Now, is that the same thing as vibrationally? You're lowering your vibration to a certain point, and if you go into the afterlife with that lower vibration, that's what sticks you there?
Yes, it could be. Yes, it could be. I mean, we're all vibrational frequencies. No matter what you're doing, we're of a vibration. And people who are negative oscillate at a lower vibrational frequency. But it's not just anger or jealousy or any of those negative emotions. A lot of people who suffer from depression are oscillating at that frequency, but what made them depressed? And this is where we come back to vibrations. What came first, the horse or the cart? Okay, what came first, the chicken or the egg? What was causing these acts of depression? What caused this person to commit suicide? Was it an outside emotion of somebody else's vibration that imprinted on them and they made that conscious human decision to take their life? Or is their human emotion that causes suicide going to oppress it on someone else? We have a client that is local, and he went through a rough period of time. He had some personal issues going on with his family, and his family broke up, and there was a lot of hardships. His family was just starting to get it together. He was on a happy path. He was doing wonderful things. And we get the phone call that he had committed suicide. And we had talked to him the day before. 3 days after he passed away, I was driving home from work, from doing my readings, and he appeared to me in the back seat. And he said, "The house did it to me." And I was kind of taken aback. I thought, the house did it to you? What do you mean? And he said it again. The house did it to me. That's all he said to me. He didn't say hello, goodbye, nothing. And he disappeared. And it made me do research. And I found out later that 3 different people at 3 different times had committed suicide in that particular house. This was a rural area. This is not, I don't live in a metropolis. And so it really made me kind of lead into more investigating and to figure out, was it really him? Yes, he was going through that depressional phase, but he was coming out of it. Why would he have done that to himself? He knew. I explained to him how it worked because he was into paranormal as well. And he knew willingly, what was happening. And so, going into that, what caused this person to commit suicide?
Yeah, that's a very good point, because a lot of things are more complex than our brains like to interpret, initially.
Well, you can walk into a mall, and a lot of people will walk into a mall and they'll feel drained when they go shopping or go into a grocery store, and they're like, oh, they're feeling drained after. Experiment. Next time you go into a mall or you go into a grocery store where there's a lot of people, close your eyes for a moment, surround yourself in white light, do your shopping, and see how you feel when you leave. You're going to notice a difference because you're putting that little mental wall up that says, no, I'm not willing to absorb your information or your energy, and you're keeping yourself safe. And
Right.
I have to do that on a daily basis.
Plus how you conduct yourself with your family and your personal relationships with your spouse,
Absolutely.
That's a big one for me anyway. Let's go to YouTube. I know there's some questions. I don't want to get too far in without getting to them.
Great questions, by the way. Great questions.
Okay, Craig had a question. Have you ever had a spirit or some entity that knows you and you'd have no idea who they are?
I have had experiences where they've contacted me by name. They knew my name. I've had instances where, I ask questions. I ask questions to make sure it's intelligent. So when we're starting to do an investigation, even in my mind or I'm doing the walk around, I'll start to ask. And, we'll try and validate it through a spirit box or, an obulus and stuff like that. And I've had instances where they've been able to tell me my name. They've been able to tell me where I live, and they've been able to tell me my a child's name. And that kind of took me back because I thought, wow, protect yourself. But yes, I have.
Okay. Edward Kensley wants to know. He's wondering if you knew where dreams came from, and also how do they happen.
Well, there's a physical side of dreams. Sleep clinics could tell you that there's physical things and endorphins that are released. I think that it comes down to realms. I think that we live in different realities in terms of our dream state versus our physical state. And I think it just depends on the situation. Sometimes a dream is nothing more than a screensaver. You've had a hard day and your mind just can't shut off. And I think, the neutrons are just going. They're going. They can't stop. I think that dreams can be messages from the other side. When you're tapping into that, heightening that vibration, that's one great way for them to come in. So when you're sleeping, you're basically the closest to death as you can get healthily. Okay, you're opening your subconsciousness because you're not afraid of judgment. There's no fear there. There's no society rules that we wake up to. So when we're sleeping, it's almost opening a doorway for them to send messages through, or your higher level of consciousness is able to get to you, essentially.
Also, fears do like to manifest a lot in your dreams.
Mm-hmm. But is it your fear? This is where I question: is this your insecurities coming through like a screensaver, where it just keeps playing? And again, I think journaling is a really great way to letting the dream go. So you're accepting the dream, you're writing it down, and you're kind of keeping a journal of it so that you can see if there's some sort of scenario happening.
Yeah.
It goes down to even an obulus. We'll be getting a lot of words or through a spirit box, and they don't make sense. But when you kind of read the dialogue from a few minutes, you're like, it makes sense. You're starting to realize that they're putting sentences together, or they're trying to get messages across.
The reason I bring that up is my wife. Well, I've studied dreams for a long time, and psychology is my thing. But my wife has reoccurring dreams of stuff she fears or phobias. Bridges going over water, tornadoes, stuff like that. Like she dreamed it's an element, either an element in her dream or the main subject matter. And it's evident that she fears those things while we're driving down the road and traveling, or we get a severe warning for the forecast. So, that to me feels like it is our fears manifesting.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that, if you try and have a lucid dream, if you try and control those dreams, or talk to your guides, talk to your higher level of consciousness when you go to bed, and try to stipulate that this is not acceptable to me, you're going to be able to change how that happens.
Yeah. I used to be able to when I was younger very well. I cannot now. And there's something to say about that. Absolutely. I don't want to get into that because we don't have too much time, but that's a whole nother show. That might be a soapbox idea.
One last question over from YouTube. Edward wanted to know, how do you stop the bad dreams that you don't like having?
Well, just like I said, you really want to set your precedents. People need to realize that it's the active intent that causes things. We manifest things every day. I go into, scenarios in a location, in a haunting, for example, that these people legitimately manifested something. It became a humanoid figure, and it was walking the house as if it was, a spirit, but it was never human. The same thing goes with a dream. You need to kind of realize that it is what it is and set that precedence. And so, talking to that higher level of consciousness, talking to your guides and saying it's not acceptable, setting it straight is going to help you. You can't, the only person that can change it is you, really. And it goes the same for when I'm doing investigations. I have to explain to these people that you've in fact created this, you've manifested this, and the only person that can get rid of it is you. You have to say, you're not welcome here, you need to go. And most of the time, we don't have a problem with it. Once we've settled it and I've explained it to them, they're able to let it go.
Makes sense to me. And there's a lot of things, when you get older, you get stuck in the rut more. You're more habitual, and I can see where people can get stuck in an endless cycle of our own fears, our own insecurities, and stuff like that, and we will lose lose touch with what we need to do on a basic level to heal ourselves and help ourselves. That's why a lot of times we rely on connections of others to point this out and kind of guide us through.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Any more questions?
Not on. No, there was not on any more questions on YouTube.
All right. We've had a lot. Is Facebook clear?
No.
I didn't think so.
I love the questions, guys.
How do you thin the veil?
Okay, that's kind of a gray, foggy question. Why would you want to thin the veil? That would I've got to ask that. Why would you want to thin it? I think as a whole in this dimension, the veil is thinning anyway. I think you're going to be seeing a lot more paranormal activity, and not just because of the media, but I think that we're having a spiritual awakening, and I think that it is thinning as a whole. But to me, unless you know what you're doing, I would encourage you not to do that, because again, the flies coming in the door, you don't know what you're getting yourself into. And, there's not just high beings and demonic beings. There's many interdimensional beings, and shadow figures, and there's a lot out there that if you don't know what you're doing, you can get into danger. So, I would ask why you want to do it.
I had someone ask me on the show yesterday what they thought about the dramatic shift in the geomagnetic north had to do with anything paranormal. What's your take on that?
I think the magnetic poles have a huge take on it. I really do. I think that the amount of equipment, the digital equipment that we're using today, the cell phones, a lot of the physical equipment that we're using is making a change. It's not just the natural magnetics that are shifting, that are creating this, but we are basically creating a power pack, a booster pack, and so it's easier for them to manifest and to show themselves.
Interesting. The rise of EVP.
You got it.
All right. Is there anything else?
Yeah, Daniel asked, how do you feel about the pagan ways in the psychic world?
So paganism, I actually use a little bit of paganism. When we go into a situation where we're doing a cleansing, depending on the person's religion or denomination, I'm not going to go in and bring, sage into a Roman Catholic house that only believes in, the Catholic ways. So we will use, holy water and different things depending on the religion. I have pagan holy water that we use. Usually I find that works better if it's an elemental spirit because it's of the earth. I'm not against paganism. I think it's a wonderful thing. I don't use it in my daily life, but I really think it serves a purpose like a lot of other things.
Yeah, if you're dealing with energies and spiritual things that stem from those type of things, it's good to be brushed up on that.
Right.
Okay, and I think I have a couple more.
Okay.
So this is back to the suicide thing. She said, so why are we on this earth spiritually? I don't understand what you said.
We're on this earth spiritually to grow as a whole. So we come in, we reincarnate into this physical world to learn learning lessons. I explain it like grade school. So we're going to keep reincarnating until we learn these learning lessons, whether it be patience or kindness or forgiveness. And I mean, there's millions of reasons, but we're all integrated into it. So once we have graduated, once we're done learning, that's when we come back as guides. Okay, so we come back not in a physical form, but we are guiding the people who have not graduated yet, and we're helping each other for the greater good, for the higher level of consciousness, for the light, essentially. If that answers your question.
I thought that was a pretty decent job. I could talk for 5 hours about that. We talked a little bit when we were testing before about that, and it's the duality. In order to know and appreciate and learn, as you stated, what something is to you, you have to go through the opposite of it. That's the only way we learn. We do not know what we have until we lose it. That is the grandest thing we can learn why we're here. Never question why you're here. You know You're just afraid of the answer.
Yeah, I think that there's a whole world involved. So let's think of a birth and a death, and maybe we touched base on this in the other show, but a whole world is involved in a birth and a death. So let's think of someone who's passed away. Okay, and this person was in just a scenario. This person was in an emergency situation. So they went to the hospital, and unfortunately, they didn't make it. So we have the family. The family's mourning, and they're upset. They're hurting. But it's not just the family that experiences this. Think of the doctors who have to learn to become doctors. Think of the paramedics. Think of the mechanics who fix the ambulances. Think of the people who create the syringes, the people who, there's such a world involved. We're so intricately put together that we don't see it for that on a cosmic level because we're so focused and self-absorbed in our little bubbles. And I don't mean self-absorbed in a negative way, but we're not thinking about what's happening halfway around the world because we're right here, right now, focusing on this. So you have to look at things on a bigger perspective. And once you kind of see it from that perspective, you'll realize that we are here for a reason, and it's for that greater good.
Awesome. We might have time for one more question if there's a good one.
Okay. Let's see. Does fear make you not see or hear spirits?
Pretty good one.
That's a great question. Yes, fear does. Fear, like any other emotion, it's a physical emotion. It's a physical emotion. It's not physical, but you understand it's a human emotion. That puts up walls. So when you're in mourning, when you're in fear, when you're overexcited, when you're overtired, that will put a wall up for you. And I have had experiences where, yeah, I have been afraid. If anybody tells you that they're not afraid to go into a dark, dingy basement and, there's one way out, I don't think they're admitting the truth. But yes, fear does cause my abilities to dampen for sure.
Psychology and metaphysics are deeply related and, woven together, and you have to have control over what your mind can do. It can be hard.
When I get into a situation where I find that I'm afraid, or I'm in a strange location, or I've lost my group, I have a policy with my team. We don't like to do things alone unless we all know about it. So if somebody says, okay, I want to be in this room alone for 15 minutes, then we'll grant it. But we have a buddy system because we don't want people getting injured or scared or scratched or anything. You have to ask yourself, we talk about it all the time in our team, why are you afraid? You can really eliminate what's going on in the situation if you ask yourself why. So if you're in this room and, I'm just making a scenario, things are being thrown or light bulbs are being broken, ask yourself, what is it about that scenario that's making you afraid? And 9 times out of 10, it's the unknown. We're afraid we don't know what's going to happen next. Is that justified in being okay to be fearful? Once you kind of say that to yourself and go, okay, is this plausible? Like, am I really, should I be afraid in this scenario? You can usually talk yourself down. And from there, you can either exit safely or the panic has kind of subsided a bit and you can make, logical choices from there.
Right. Obviously, we cannot continue. We could, but I'm going to keep it to an hour tonight. I've already did 2-hour shows this week. But why don't you tell the viewers how they can follow your work, how they can get in touch with you if they have any questions, and so they can, if there's any more questions, they can come to you.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you, Justin and ladies, for this was a wonderful chat. I enjoyed this, and I thank you, all my fans and viewers, for the wonderful questions. You guys are more than welcome to message me, through my Facebook page, Katie Turner Psychic, Facebook, or katieturnerpsychic.com. If you would like to want me to answer any more questions, I have no problems doing that. You can catch me on Paranormal Survivor, seasons 1 through 5. It's on local television stations, Travel Channel, Destination America, and in Canada, Travel and Escape. You can look us up on the web for our paranormal team. It's CanadianSupernaturalResearchSociety.com. And you know what, if you want to give me a message or if you have any questions, just, feel free.
Thank you, Katie. It was very, very delightful to have you on.
Oh, thank you.
And, get your insight on, the subject matter of, being a psychic, being a sensitive, it's something that is deeply interesting, not only to me, but people who watch this show. I mean, it's a popular thing amongst, the paranormal community. So I'm glad that we got your take and your insight on it. And
Well, thank you.
hopefully,
I appreciate it.
You're welcome. And hopefully we'll have you on sometime in the near future. This show is going to get a rehaul. I don't know what's going to happen to Necromancer in 2019 going into the second quarter, but I'm wanting to do some different stuff and change things around, refresh it a little bit. But if you, we're going to wrap up the show. The links that Katie mentioned are in the video description, so you have no excuse not to find them. But if you want to hang out on the call while I wrap up the show, that's fine. If you got to go, then you got to go. All right. There you go, guys. I mean, I don't know how many more questions and bits of information we can get in a 1-hour show, so hopefully that will suffice for now. Thank you very much for tuning in and asking those questions. It makes my job easier. All right. Make no mistake. I like it when you guys ask questions. So, what we're going to do is we're going to jump over here to these links. Not only the links in the description that I spoke about, but these links are important as well. If you want to follow the paranormal work that I do, interfacedeath.net is there. The link is in the description. Patreon.com/support interface death. That is the way to financially support us if you choose to. $1 a month or more. There's rewards that you can get for doing the certain tiers and pledges each month, and we will elaborate on what people do that here in a minute. You can follow the show on Necromancer live show on Facebook if you're watching on YouTube. You can follow Interface Death on Twitter and Instagram. Without the support of our patrons here on the screen, this content would not be possible. As I say every time, Clay Borman, R.J. Murphy, Casey Schreiner, Jessica Bias, Scotty Fox, Bill Davis, Joe Vitale, Heather Elliott, General Rogue, Craig Williams, and Cherry Capital Shadow Seekers. Thank you very much. Your support is appreciated. If you want to be a part of this, you know how to do it. Patreon.com/support interface death. And that's where I'm going to leave it. Next week, I am going to put up the poll to see what we're going to talk about on our Tuesday show, My Paranormal Soapbox at 8 p.m. Next week, we have Alex. I don't want to mispronounce her last name. Matsuo. Okay. Very, very interested in talking to her. And get on the mailing list on our website so you do not miss any updates. Follow us on social media. You guys have a good one. If you're new to the show and want to see some video promotions at the end, please do so. You guys have a good night. Do you have that drive? That morbid curiosity to explore the darkness? Do you have what it takes to brave the night? You do? Good.
Dead light. For those who aren't afraid to see what lurks in the night. I can feel you still dreaming, teeming with eternal will.
wandering around somehow.
Are you down there? Not afraid. We know what it feels like to walk in the darkness.
Are you in this room over here? What the fuck, dude?
Whoa.
That's weird.
You didn't do anything, right?
No, it just turned.
Justin too close.
No, I
No,
wasn't
he
right.
opened that door and then went off.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you just run out of there?
isolation. Helpless. Brain stimuli.
So what do you think of this piece of evidence?
I think by far it's